Hello everyone and welcome to Grove. My name is Hawk and today is the start of a new series where I do some grinding or other Minecraft activity while rambling about some topic I want to ramble about. It's just to give me some breathing room for role-playing series, which I want to make more of. But captions take a while and setup can take a while, so I decided on making this a new series. So today's topic is actually going to be about the shutting down of Mineplex, because while I never was a staff there, I was a person who often played it for a lot of. It was like one of my main servers that I played on for quite a while. I started playing on it in about, I think it was when I was in middle school. I'm not entirely sure when. The point is, it was a really fun server, and it's kind of sad hearing that it's getting shut down, but at the same time I tried to log on even like a couple of years ago where I wanted to see like, oh, nostalgia, let me go onto this old server, and there's like certain games weren't even there. It was hard. One of the games that I was trying to go on was like laggy, and so I couldn't really play it, and so it also does not come to us as a surprise that they're shutting down. But I still have a lot of fond memories of playing on the server. So I thought, since I was one of the people who played on the server a lot, just like as a casual player, what are some memories that I remember for playing Mineplex? So I do have like a short list of things to help spark my memory. So all I have written down on that one is have the usual. I don't know what I meant by that. Oh, so Mineplex, of course, had the usual, like, I think they had a skyblock. They definitely had survival games, which I'll actually talk about a memory that I have from playing that. But they had, like, anything that you could think of. They had a faction server, I think, and a survival server at one point. I don't remember. I could be wrong. But they had the usual games. For example, the survival games I actually played for a little bit, which is weird to think about because I am not usually a person who plays that type of game now. And it wasn't any like kits. You just have to use all of the armor and tools that you got when you arrived in the arena. It was just whatever you found, and that's what you had to deal with. It was very fun, and I used to put Nightcore music in the background. And so there are certain songs. Okay, hello. And so there are certain songs that like give me like a flashback of that time. So, which I think is very funny. I remember distinctly one point where I was shifting so I could team with another player, because you were allowed to team with players. You just because it was one of those things where it wasn't duos, it was just singles, and so it was like if you wanted to, you could team with other players, even just temporarily. And there was this one time when I was shifting to like be like yes to a player. I got sticky keys, but I had somehow switched to my first slot, which had a sword in it, and then so it had a sword in it. And I think it was sticky keys. Oh, wait, no. The reason I had a sword in my hand was because you would block whenever you. I don't have it. Shoot, I don't have anything right now. But basically, you would block your sword to show, yeah, no, I'm not going to fight you. So, and then I did sticky keys, which means I had my sword in my hand, but I couldn't control where I was going. And it looked like I was going to attack them because I think the forward key also got stuck. Maybe that's what I was doing, and I'm like, I can't, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to attack you. And then I think they attacked me and killed me. Either that or they ran away, and I'm like, no! That's not what I wanted. So, yeah. So it's just a fun memory where just some of those classic games were in Mineplex. But they also had some ones which I don't really think where it was sort of specific to them. For example, their holiday games were usually there were two main ones. There was a Halloween holiday game, and then there was a Christmas themed one. The Christmas themed one was basically you would try to save Santa Santa got kidnapped by the Pumpkin King, and he had to go save him. And what basically you would do is you would have this huge, what's it called? It's not a corridor or hallway. Basically, there were two main cliffs, like one on this side and then one on this side, and there may be like activities on those sides or different things, and you would progress in the whole group that you were with, because you were with a bunch of group of people that were doing the holiday game at the same time. And so you'd have some people fighting off mobs, trying to protect the peoples who were like either doing parkour or trying to solve a puzzle, and you'd go down this sort of cliff side route, and you would basically get to the end, and then you're able to do the boss battle for Pumpkin King and save the day. The main memory that I remember is doing parkour during that, and also the ice maze. The ice maze was one where you had to get through the ice maze, but two people had to flick this lever, and then if we got it was either two people, or they're like two levers or like one lever, but it was very hard to get to, so like a bunch of people would try to be solving the maze at the exact same time. If you knew the path, it would be good. It would just be really hard to do. And there would be this other game on the other side. There was some people trying to get to the other side, but snowballs were being thrown by evil snowmen or something like that. I can't remember what the other side was doing, but it was a lot of fun. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun, and I kind of want to make my own ice maze again. I say again because I have tried to do it before, but I think it would be fun because it is challenging, but it's something really fun to do. And then you also had the Halloween event, which distinctly was basically sort of like a tower defense game, except it was really hard. And I played it like 100 times before I was in a group that actually got it to work, where we got the Pumpkin King defeated. Because the thing is, if you died, you couldn't be revived during that game. And I think it was the same way for the Christmas event too, but it was there's a lot less chance of dying on that one. And it was just hard, and you just had to progress. But with the Pumpkin King one, it was like, oh no, at least with the pumpkin sort of tower defense, because you were supposed to, there'd basically be in the middle, there would be this crypt that you would have to protect, and so it's the center of the map. And then you'd have some monsters coming in from the mountains, some coming in from the farms, some coming in from, I'm not sure what was over here. I think the town was over here, because it was a similar map to one of the other games, but I remember their town, maybe there were like caves or something over here, and then there was like sea back here, so occasionally you would have people coming in, monsters coming in from this area. So it was really hard, and you also had like different classes, so I would normally pick Ranger. There would be Builder, who would be I think it would maybe be Healer. I want to say there was a Builder, but I could be wrong. Where it was like, I know there was like a tank where it would like you have better armor, and there was also a Ranger, which you would be able to get a bunch of arrows every few seconds. So, and then if you had this charge ability that was on cooldown, where you could just do like a lot, basically like the triple charge on crossbows now, but it was more like just a spray of arrows, which was very helpful, because again, it was very hard. You could play the game probably 1,000 times and not get away if you just didn't have good people. And often we would have like communication where it's just like waves of people, and it was a lot of fun. I kind of wish, if I can figure out a way to code it, or I can simulate that for friends and stuff, I would gladly do it. Why is this just a random... Oh. If I could make code it where I could have my friends and I do that again, oh man, it would be really cool. Oh man. For a very short period of time, I had this one game which I really liked was Assassins, which is very similar to one of the murder mystery game modes where you have NPCs and then people would be hiding among those NPCs and you would want to kill them if you're the murderer. That minigame style, imagine that, but everyone looks like an NPC, specifically villagers, and you had these points on the map where you could go and get power-ups, and the goal was to kill every other person beside yourself. So that was a lot of fun. It was tense, but it was a lot of fun. It wasn't the only game that I sort of focused on either. It was one of the games I focused on, but one of the other games that I really liked was this speed building game, where it's similar to the Minecraft Championships. You have a build that you're referencing, and then you have to build it. Well, the thing is, you don't have a reference build. You just have to... You have maybe a minute to reference a build, and then you're supposed to build it. Maybe not even that. Maybe it's more like you only have 30 seconds. It was some short time, and then you have to speed build it. You're given maybe a minute to build that build. And if you played a lot like me, you sort of understood, okay, these are the things that I usually get tripped on, so these are the things that I need to work on, and oh, I built this one before. Okay, I'll do this. So it was really fun. It was a really fun memorization game, and it was... What's interesting is that you would get judged by this guardian, just floating guardian in the center, like one of the guardian mobs in Minecraft. Her name was Gwen, and Gwen would be someone who would do judgment. So if your island would blow up, because everyone sort of has islands, so you'd have the center area where Gwen would be floating in the air, and then it would have different islands where people would be trying to copy their build. And you would just go around and everyone would try to be copying the build. But say someone disconnected, well, their island would just explode in a very nice animation. And if, say, you got judgment where, oh, you got caught for hacking by the anti-hacking software, well, then Gwen would just look at you and poof, your island gone. And then say everyone got to the end of the round, Gwen would just circle around and you would get your score, and it was always but it would take a few minutes to figure out which person got the lowest score, and so we'd just be waiting, and just even if you had say an 87 or a 93, you'd just be with bated breath. It's did I get the lowest score? And usually you could tell if somebody did really bad, but especially with the final, when it got down to say 3 people, it would really be, oh, anyone's game. You could just, die at any time. So you would be standing on here, and then it would just lock on to one specific one. Then they would be laser, and poof, their island would just be gone. It was really fun, and I played that so much. And so yeah, I did memorize some of the builds. I could if I saw them now, I probably could build them with same or similar amount of accuracy, but I could not. I could not just rebuild them offhand, but at that time, I could probably get at least close. Yeah, and so that is one example of one of the games that I really like to play on. And that was one of those games where I'm like, oh, I really like this game, so I would just play it so much. And one of the other games I would play on is Block Hunt. And a fun story about that is at one point there's something which I like to call the War of the Pots. And for those who don't know, this was War of the Pots. And what this really was, it was something that just kept occurring during games. So I don't know if there's just like an official thing, but it just caught on and just became very common. So I decided to give it a fun name, at least in my memory. And what it was is that during the block hunt game, you can disguise yourself as different blocks. Well, the game makers made it so one of those blocks could be pots, which was which ended up not being a really good thing for those hunting on the hunters team. And here's why. If you have ever tried to like hit a small block that is moving a little faster than you and is just small and hard to hit, just know that it's extremely hard. It's hard for the hunters to hit you, and you can just find your way on top of a house because they could using parkour, and it would just be so annoying to deal with. Like, it's good if you're a hider and you don't have to deal with it, or if you're one of the pots, but if you're not one of the pots, oh man, it could get so frustrating, especially since you could get sniped from on top of the house and not really able to do anything unless you're actually, you know, able to be up there. And this would just keep happening. Someone figured it out, and it spread like wildfire, which I find so funny. At least I found it at the time. Eventually it dwindled out where people wouldn't really use the strategy anymore. I can't remember why. Maybe they like disabled it, or there was like an unspoken gentleman's rule where you didn't do that. You would get the occasional person, but it was really funny. For a period of time, it would just be like, and so you have a group of like 3 to 5 players on the hiders team, which weren't hiding, were in plain sight, but they were a pot, and which were extremely annoying to hit, and we're just going ham on the hunters, and it was so funny. Like, at first there was like maybe 1 or 2 players, but it got to be like, okay, you clearly could tell, like, either the people who were hiding were new players, or people who just didn't have the best PvP skills, so just decided to hide, or if they were a PvP player, because they would be disguised as a pot, as a hunter. It would be just so funny. And just so funny. Oh man, and I have distinct memories of this, so I'm very confident it was a thing that happened. So that was one of my funnier stories. Another story I have is about a game that I just really like to play, and this is basically going to be an introduction to a different story, which I will tell about a different game, and I'll just go and explain it. Which is, so One in a Quiver. It's similar to Bounty Hunters in Hypixel Arcade, but instead of like having one person to target, everyone's against everyone else without the target system that's in Bounty Hunters. But other than that, I think it plays the same. So basically every few seconds what was it? If you die, you get sent to a random point on the map, and if you get a kill, you get an arrow. If you don't get a kill, you don't get an arrow. And if you lose your arrow, you have to kill someone in order to get another one. That's pretty much just how it went. But for One in the Quiver, you also had different classes. Hypixel Bounty Hunters doesn't have a class. It's just everyone's the same class. But in One in the Quiver, there were a few different ones. There was sort of normal, basic. There was Berserker, or some other class where basically you got, I think, a better sword. Yeah, you either got a sword instead of a 1-in-1 or something like that. For me, I would always choose Enchanter, because that meant that if you hit one person, if there were a couple people in the vicinity, it would bounce them, and so you'd get those kills too. And so I could get so many points using that because I was pretty good at sniping people. This was when also in the older mechanic for how bows work. Now there's like a bow spread, but this is like if you point somewhere, it's really as long as you can draw like charge the arrow enough, charge the bow enough, you can just snipe them. And it was so satisfying to be able to hit people from like 50 blocks away, but also get the people that they were fighting next to. It was really good. And these classes were really easy to get too. You would get, no matter what minigame you're like not using, no matter what minigame you're playing, you could get coins. And those coins you could then spend on, maybe they were called gems, but you would be able to play the games and then get the kits. So it was very, very nice. It was a very good system. And I was just like, even though I played a lot, I only really got 30 minutes of fun screen time, or I think we called it candy screen time for Minecraft. That's what I would use Minecraft for. So 30 minutes a day max probably for playing these types of games. And I got it within like maybe a couple weeks. It was not that bad a system. And once I got Enchanter, man, I just really loved playing that game because it was really good. And so I keep looking out for games that include bows and arrows because of that, because I really liked that game. And there was like another game that got me hooked on using bows and arrows. And I just really loved doing that game, which is why I would also choose Ranger when I'd do this next game, which is Sheep Quest. So basically what Sheep Quest was is that you had a place in the center where all of the sheep would spawn originally. Then you would try to pick up the sheep, which you could, and you would drop them into your little pen. But the thing is, other people could take your sheep and get it into their pen. And so the wool color would change, and the different areas of the map were based off a different biome. For green team, which I really enjoyed playing because I like the color green. There's literally nothing else other than the fact that I like green. We had a jungle theme, and and the yellow team was desert. Then you had sort of like a mushroom biome for red team, and then you had a tundra biome themed area for the blue team. And I played it so much. I did try out tank, which you got, I think, better armor and a better sword, but you didn't really have a bow. Then you had a ranger who did have a bow and got, and I want to say an extra arrow every so often. And then I want to say there was that standard class, which would just be the standard class, where you got, I think, a bow and arrow, but it would regenerate slowly or something. Maybe tank was that you were able to pick up 2 sheep at one time instead of 1. I don't remember. I distinctly remember them being more than 1 class. But I think what was interesting about playing the game all the time, especially since they didn't really change the map, is that you could very well predict sort of what would happen during any given match. Really interesting because it had to do with placement on the field. It's just like, oh, who would be interacting with who the most, because you're most likely not going to go to the team that's directly across from you because it would be just harder to do that. Because again, you're playing a game where people are trying to kill you if you steal their sheep. So you would not often go to the other side. So I didn't often go to red. I would try to sneak around to get to red, but I often would just fight for the middle or try to steal the blue or yellow sheep. But it was really interesting because I could tell you anything, like how a game would go. So basically, how a game would go is that you would have your regular team, and I'm going to tell this from the perspective of somebody who is mainly on green team, because you could choose which team you're on, because why not? And coordination with friends, I guess. And so on green team, at least, you would mainly be in competition with red and yellow. Not red and yellow. Red, blue, or yellow. But which I know those are the three colors. So basically, you'd be in competition with yellow because they would keep stealing your sheep. Mainly your sheep. That was the only real reason, because red would continue to steal from yellow, and so they'd mainly be clashing, but they'd be trying to steal your sheep. But most of the time, it would be blue and green holding on to the most sheep. Then you would have red stealing enough sheep where they would end up being targeted, and then in some cases, yellow would just come out of nowhere, and turns out they have the most sheep, so everyone would converge on them because you could see how many people had what numbers were in the sheep in the sidebar, just like, oh, the currently blue team's in the lead or whatever, so everyone would be targeting them, because that's just how team games work. You just target whoever's the most threat. But what's interesting is but it really would be green and blue targeting each other, red trying to steal from blue, yellow trying to steal from green, regardless of the situation, because it's just easy to get. But it was very funny. It's like so consistency. It's like, if you're a green player, okay, well, yellow's going to try to steal from you regardless of how many sheep you have, even though you're trying to target blue, not because they're next to you, but because they currently have the most sheep, but because you're so distracted, suddenly red has gotten all the sheep because nobody's been paying attention in the middle. It was just really funny to be like, and so I could probably tell you tell me your team, and I'd probably tell you just like, oh, okay, your team's probably doing this strategy right now. And I'm not joking. Like, because of how many people would target the teams next to them, it would be like, oh, nobody's targeting the middle? Okay, red or yellow is just like yoinking from the middle because green and blue are just warring with each other and red is not. So it was really interesting where it's just like, yes, the politics are that the yellow is just mad at specifically green. Like, I don't think many of the yellow team would go after red, because red would just be left behind as well and have to, blue would try to steal from red, but most often the competition would be against green for some reason. Green and blue always tended to be the people who were higher. Like, it'd usually be a competition between green and blue, with red sometimes being targeted when they stole enough from blue or from in the middle, and then yellow, if they would be targeted, but oftentimes they would just be the person just silently stealing sheep from everyone else or from the middle. Nobody's really paying attention to them other than greens, because yellow just really likes taking from green because green would just be having a lot. And it was just so funny that I would play that game. I don't know how much of that was able to be followed, but it was just really funny to be like, I have played enough game to be at one point just having the thought of, I played this game so many times. I know exactly what happens in every single game. Sure, it's situation dependent, like who has the most sheep, but odds are that I can probably decently predict what you're gonna do based on what the current state of the game is, plus what team you're on. If blue team, for example, say you're on red team, blue team is currently with the highest amount, you're probably stealing from them. If green has the highest amount, you're probably stealing from the middle or from blue team. If you have the highest amount, you're trying to just kill anyone who's trying to steal your sheep. Like, oftentimes you'd still pay attention to yellow, but let's be honest, yellow's probably mostly you trying to bug green. It's really funny, and just like, and then green, and then it goes back to blue. Okay, and now you're going to focus on stealing from blue. It's just really funny. What's also interesting is that they don't just drop the sheep, so you can pick them up, and you could just drop them in your pen, or alternatively, you could just throw them into your pen, just like yeet. Does anyone say eat anymore? I don't know. Probably not, but I think it's a funny word to say, so I said it. But it was really funny how distinctive that was, and it was one of my Mineplex was how I got into playing minigame servers and having a lot of fun. So it's really sad that it's shutting down, because I'm probably not alone in the fact that it wasn't the fact that it was sort of a big part of an early Minecraft experience. I'm probably not alone in that. But like I said, when I was trying to look back at going back to the server just to have some fun, like, oh, maybe I can play One in the Quiver, or I think the game that I looked at was Speed, like a speed building game. I did see that they took out Dominant. I don't think they had Assassins at that time, or like nobody was playing Assassins or One in the Quiver. People were, like, a few people were playing Speed Builder, and so I would play the speed building game, and so I tried to play that, but it was too laggy, and like I even had to downgrade a couple versions just so I could play on the server. It was bad. But so I'm not surprised that it's shutting down, because already it was starting to, its lifespan was definitely degrading. So I'm not surprised that the staff are like, yeah, we're just going to shut this down, but because we can't continue it anymore, especially when they're competing with places like Hypixel, which is doing a wonderful job, and it was able to figure out how you could create a minigame server that was sustainable, because they have a large variety of games, but they also have, like, they figured out how to do ranks really well, where you could still enjoy the server, but it still also had a way that they could be supported by people paying for ranks. Meanwhile, Mineplex, it was sort of hard. Excuse me. Hello, lag. Where it was harder for a person to do that. So, but I had a lot of fun playing on the server, and those are some of my major memories of playing on the server, so I'm glad I got to share you with them, because I'm one of the people who really likes playing on Mineplex, and I do think it's still going to be sad that it's going to be gone. And I also hope that I can continue more of this series where I just ramble on about whatever I'm doing. I'll still edit this video so it's somewhat understandable, where you can still sort of follow along. But I will also just be basking in the wonderful memories and the bittersweet ending of Mineplex. And I don't think I really have much else to say, so thank you for watching or listening. If you're one of those people who just decided, hey, you know what, I'll just put this on the background because I don't know because mining is boring to look at. I see you. I know what you're doing because I do it too. Don't be ashamed by it. Thanks for listening to the video. And if you have any other topics you want me to just ramble on about, like, hey, what's your opinion on this? Or, like, just a topic that you think would be interesting for me to rant about, I'll gladly do it. But for right now, I shall get out of this cave and just do a little thing. I hope you had a good day, or night, or at least time watching this video, and I will have an end screen where you can look at some of my other series that I'm doing, or more ranting, rambling. But all this is to say, I hope you had a good time watching the video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye!